Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. This week we visit the wonderful yet eerie remains of Roche Abbey, a monastery that lies in the wooded valley of the Maltby Beck, about 9 miles from Doncaster and close to Sheffield in South Yorkshire. Now only a small part of the eastern end of the Abbey church remains, standing to any height, but this was once a splendid 12th century church, one of the earliest built in the new Gothic style in northern England. So join us as we explore the remains that scar this forgotten ruin. Roche was founded in 1147 and began building on the stone church around the 1170s. Although never a large or wealthy abbey, the abbey built up a moderate collection of landholdings during the 12th and 13th century and played a significant part in the history of the region in the later Middle Ages. Like other monastic houses, Roche was suppressed in the reign of Henry VIII. The monks dispersed and the abbey buildings were very much destroyed. In 1147, the abbey was founded by Richard de Busli, the Lord of Tickhill, who was probably the great-nephew of the first Roger de Busli, the Norman builder of nearby Tickhill Castle, and Richard Fitzturgis. Its monks first came from the abbey at Newminster in Northumberland, and it was them who chose the Beckside site. The abbey became a place of pilgrimage due to one of the rocks at Roche bearing the resemblance to the cross. One quite unusual feature here is that the church was never remodelled or rebuilt, making it an almost unaltered example of a 12th century abbey church. The best preserved building is the 14th century gatehouse, which stands upon the foundations of a still earlier gatehouse structure. Situated on both banks of Maltby Beck, this site is protected by steep cliffs to the north, from which the name meaning by the rocks derives. The church and chapter house, cloister, and the daughters and fraters of the monks and the lay brothers are on the north side of the beck, whilst the monk's daughter and frater extend over Maltby Beck on bridges. The infirmary, abbot's lodgings and kitchens, and the other buildings stand on the south bank of the beck. Roche Abbey stands in an 18th century parkland that was designed by famed landscaped gardener Lancelot Brown. The abbey has one of the best preserved ground plans of any Cistercian monastic site, enabling you to readily see the layout of the abbey buildings, and this couldn't be more true when you watch Breckcam later on. By using your imagination, the beauty of the whole structure really comes to life whilst you're walking around. The two well-proportioned pointed arches on the north and south transept of the church, which rest upon clustered columns, with plain capitals that rise above and take centre stage. The architecture here at Roche is distinctively Gothic and invented and developed in and around Paris in the 1140s. Normally the style would be a single structural feature, like the pointed arches and rib vaults here at Roche. This is often compared with the Romanesque style that has been in use since 1066, but the Gothic look is brighter and often favoured larger window openings, like here again at Roche. Inside the south wall are the remains of a piscina, or a basin that would be used for the washing of the mass vessels, and to the west are the remains of the seats for the priests who were officiating at the Mass. On the north side are the traces of a tomb of some unknown benefactor to the abbey, but this is still really interesting to look for. The architecture of these remains indicate that this was towards the end of the 12th century, as the time of construction of the church. Roche was home to an order of Cistercian monks, and it was quite advanced for a monastery of the medieval period. Later developments included a kitchen and the other buildings, including the abbot's rooms that were across the river from the abbey, which were reached by a small bridge. Also taking position over the water were a set of latrines, which emptied directly into the stream, which the monks had dammed further upstream, in order to provide a faster run of water. This is super impressive to be able to look around. It's great that much of the underground water system is still very much intact, and you can see still where the water was drawn, where the toilet facilities would have been, and the washing platforms. In the later 14th century, John de Livett sold his share to a businessman named Richard Barry from London. By the time of the Dissolution, it was controlled by the second Earl of Cumberland, Henry Clifford, who was married to Eleanor Brandon, who was the daughter of Charles, the Duke of Suffolk, and niece of Henry VIII. To say he benefited financially from the closure of Roche Abbey would be an understatement. There were several grants that were made to Henry VIII to Clifford in relation to the land and assets as compensation. Although there are no surviving financial accounts or records of life in the 400 years of the monastery, we do know that when Roche was dissolved, there were 14 to 17 monks in residence, the abbot, Henry Cundall, and an unknown number of novices, possibly the 3 that make up the difference in monks. The local population, including his father, felt very much as though the abbey was part of their community, and as a result that they should be entitled to a share of the spoils. So they pretty much robbed everything out that they could of the timbers, the lead and the stonework. Nothing was left sacred. Even the tombs of the nobles and the brothers buried within the precincts were turned over and ransacked for anything of value. Strangely, however, the administrative and livestock buildings over the river remained untouched. In ruins, the remains of the proud abbey and the land of which it once stood on were passed around as part of deals and trade, until eventually in the 18th century landing into the hands of the Earl of Scarborough, who owned the land next to the former abbey grounds. In an effort to make the scenery more aesthetically pleasing to his Sandbeck Park seat, he commissioned renowned landscaper Lancelot Brown to tidy up the site. Brown launched into an ambitious remodelling of the ruins, which included pulling down most of the remainder and burying large parts of what was left under large grassy mounds. New turf has since been added and was planted with new trees to create a cosy woodland vibe. Realistically, not much more is known about Roche, possibly because Cromwell's commissioners sold the manuscripts and the parchment by the cartload for use as kindling right up until the Dissolution. The once proud abbey remained hidden from view for nearly a century and a half, until 1920, when it was excavated and claimed as a monument by the English Heritage, along with the remains of the medieval woodland that it sits alongside. The stone bridge remains over the river and the huge walls of the north and south transepts rise up alone quite suddenly from the valley below as you drive the modern road that runs along the cliff edge, when you turn your head backwards for a glimpse as it cuts away. The robbed out walls have been picked out and relaid extensively to give an accurate interpretation of the extent of the fine building that Roche Abbey really once was. There are several local legends that claim that the abbey is haunted with lost souls. Apparently, on a winter's evening, if you found yourself wandering the remains, you might hear the sounds of the monks chanting their prayers, or soft footsteps walking up and down the church. Or you may be able to see the hooded spook that it's seen often slowly moving around the ruins of this once proud abbey. It's thought that there were secret passages underground of the abbey. Who knows what lingers below? And another feeling is of bad energy, as some have said that the site is haunted by the ghosts of several murdered monks. How true that is depends on your belief in such things. We very much enjoyed our visit. It was completely tranquil and perfect for an explore. The abbey site sits at the end of an attractive limestone gorge, and the ruins are extra atmospheric during foggy days. But even on good days, it's wonderful to be able to enjoy a walk, a drink, and a picnic. There are also several walks and trails in the area that are worth thinking about. What I really liked about the abbey was how quiet it was. You couldn't hear any traffic or another person. The only sound was the nearby stream. It's a great place to go for a walk and to reflect. So that's it for this week, and we hope you've enjoyed our explore today at Roche Abbey. If you have, please be sure to hit that like button. Consider subscribing to the channel and maybe supporting us further on our Patreon or by joining us here as channel members. We want to say a big thank you to our Patreons and our channel members. So we'll see you on the next one. Till next time.